The countdown's begun to the final preseason game of the season as the Chiefs get ready to make their roster for this run at another Super Bowl appearance. We're going to get to all the things going on, the comings, the goings, who's here, who's not, who might not be, and who's got to do something to be there. Matt Derrick is here, and we're going to go back and forth about it a little bit. So welcome. This is Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. Nice to have you here. We're brought to you today by LinkedIn. It's the one place where you can post your job and get your hire done real fast. Check them out at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. We have a lot to go over today. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're part of the network that is Locked On, your team every day for free. And we have the transactions that have just hit the wire. I'm Ryan Tracy, founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL 33, RGR Football. And he is Matt Derrick, who runs all the info that I use. You can find him at ChiefsDigest.com. Whew, I got it all out, Matt. Now we have to go over all these transactions, right? It's Tuesday. We finally got the information of who's not going to be around and a couple of questions.
Yeah, the new ones that we've got to get the Chiefs down from 82 to 80 after the three moves they made on Monday. We got running back Derek Gore with a fractured thumb going to injured reserve. And Lucas Niang, who has not been practicing, has been spending all of training camp on the reserve pup on the pup list, rather the active pup list. He's going to the reserve pup list, which is just a procedural move, but it does mean that he's out a minimum of the first 4 weeks of the season.
I think that's interesting. It's too bad for Derek Gore, who just broke that thumb here this last weekend. That effectively ends his season, correct?
Yeah, there are some peculiar procedural moves where he could come back either with the Chiefs or with another club, but one that's contingent on him becoming healthy, being exposed to waivers. There's a lot of things. So never say never, but yeah, I mean, this is usually the phrasing you would hear at this point would be effectively ends his season. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I got to qualify those things. I'm not very good at that sometimes, but hey, those are things that make the differences. Now with Lucas, I don't know that that's a big shock. We haven't seen him yet. I'm happily surprised that this active pup, reserve pup, would allow him only 4 weeks, right? Because if they had to carry him onto the roster at cut down and then put him on IR, that's a 6-week turnover, right? So does that mean they're feeling optimistic?
Well, they've changed things a little bit. So the pup list used to be a minimum of 6. Now it's down to 4. So that's in his favor. If he was on reserve, then yeah, I mean, they could put him, he could be back in as soon as 3 weeks or 4 weeks, excuse me. They changed that as well, or 3 weeks. Now you got me confused. But it's not a major distinction as far as that goes. The one thing it does is just the biggest difference between going on IR is that just in the Gore case with Niang, that would essentially end his season if he went on IR right now. If you put him on the 53 and then IR, he could come back a little bit more quickly, but that's dependent on if he's passed his physical by then. And since he hasn't yet, that's what's really the key in the procedural move to put him on the pup list. Essentially, he's not eligible, essentially, to a degree. I mean, he couldn't be. You could put him on the 53, I guess, from a legal standpoint, but he hasn't passed the physical yet. And it's not clear that he's going to be ready physically and be cleared medically before next Tuesday when you would start building that 53. So this protects the Chiefs. It protects Niang too, to a degree. But you already knew, the Chiefs knew that he was already going to most likely miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season. Remember, the plan all along was that hopefully he can be doing football activities by the beginning of September. If that's the case, that's still a long way from being ready to play. So that's a longer term deal.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And hopefully they can get them back. The recovery path, I think, is much different for him than, say, someone else that they have to get there too. That someone else in particular, in my mind, being Carlos Dunlop, that I was surprised. I was taken off guard because of my schedule. I didn't see the announcement, but the Achilles, what did they term it? A swelling?
Yes.
Yeah. I went back and I checked, and I don't see an Achilles-related injury in his past that I was able to find. Have you verified that? Is this a new condition? Did he get kicked, or what happened here?
Yeah, I haven't seen of one either, and it was out of nowhere because he appeared to be a full participant in practice on Thursday, and then did not dress, did not go through warm-ups, anything on Saturday before the preseason game. So clearly it was something that must have popped up between practice Thursday and the game on Saturday. You're right. I know of no injury history or anything with that Achilles for Carlos. So could be entirely precautionary at this point. And, and Andy Reid's saying, hey, it is progressing and they're just not pushing it. So I guess no real major concern until maybe we get to, really week one. The Chiefs are done with practice for this week. They have 2 practices, I believe, next week before they go on their break before the holiday weekend that the NFL players now get. So really, you've only got 2 more practices. We know he's not going to play Thursday. So 2 more days before you get to the regular season. Hey, if they just wanted to give him a little bit of a veteran's rest until then, I don't think that that's a major concern to have at this point.
No, I wouldn't think so either. And then that gives him that recovery time so that he's available when they play the Cardinals. And I think that will hit. Do they plan on coming back in early? Or are they going to hit like a normal Monday practice schedule?
Yeah, it sounds like they'll be in the facility Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then they go on a break, so they're off Thursday through Sunday. Then they're back on Monday, so they get that 4-day break for the weekend. So a pretty light week. I mean, they will have a few practices next week, but nothing too intense. Nothing like, of course, what they're coming out of with training camp in the preseason.
Right. All right. Well, let's hope that takes care of it, and we'll have to check in because it came up so fast. Hopefully, it goes away just as fast because that's going to be key. We'll talk about the implications later. There are yet more things to talk about availability-wise for not just this ball game, but for the season and question marks. We're going to get into more of that after we tell you about our newest sponsor. As you gear up for fall, you need to find the right people to help your team and your small business fire on all the cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier for you to find the people that you want to talk to faster and for free. I'm always looking for good content creators, graphic artists, et cetera, et cetera. It makes it simple to just create a job in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs and reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. You add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame comes in on your LinkedIn profile, and it spreads the word to your network as well as others that you're trying to find the right people to hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. And did you know that every week 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free on linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. The other thing is the ultimate football preview is happening now. Make sure you check that out over on its own feed. You don't want to miss it as all of Locked On chips in to get ready for this new season. Now, a couple of hiccups here, and unfortunately, it seems we're talking a lot about the offensive side of the ball, but the big question mark is this I don't even think it was well explained, but a slight explanation of the Blake Bell injury from Andy Reid that he has had surgery at this point. It is a hip flexor that is generally the muscle that is an external rotator of the femur bone. That is a very complex injury. And I think actually it's much more serious than they seem to want to let on. What was your impression of this?
Yeah, from the get-go, it certainly sounded like this was a little bit more complicated than what you normally hear with a hip flexor. Hey, most of the time, those don't require surgery. Guys, get some rest, maybe 2 to 6 weeks, and they're back. This never seemed that way. I mean, Andy Reid from the very beginning said that this one was a little bit more unusual. And no, the Chiefs have not gone into detail to tell us why it's unusual. But when announcing that he was going to be he had undergone surgery, and saying not, and when asked about going to IR, Andy told us that, hey, don't know about that, but it's going to be a while. So, and that certainly jibes with the fact that the Chiefs put in a waiver claim on Kendall Blanton, another big tight end who could possibly be a blocking type. I mean, certainly they're in the market for somebody who has a Blake Bell skill set. So I think that absolutely tells us that Blake Bell's probably going to be out for a little while.
So, but the way that goes, though, does that make you feel like they're going to have to do the back and forth to put him on the 53, pop him or something, and then bring him back?
Yeah, and pup is essentially not an option at this point because that really is only an option when once you practice. Yeah, it's no longer possible. So it's IR or bust. And just like in the case with Derek Gore, if he goes on IR right now, won't be eligible to come back with the Chiefs. So, yeah, if the Chiefs do see him as being able to return this season, then they want the option to be able to designate him to return. you'll have to count him on your 53 roster, and then he can go on IR next Wednesday.
Okay. So it seems like this is heading down a road where cut down day is going to be really, really complicated. Am I wrong?
No, it's complicated every year, and honestly, I think this one's going to be more complicated than most, for no other reason than the Chiefs have some difficult decisions to make at more than a couple of positions.
That's absolutely true, and there is depth to be had at wide receiver. Unfortunately, JuJu Smith-Schuster is still out, and then MVS missed practice today. So what do we know about those guys?
Yeah, MVS is a little bit of a mystery. I mean, it could just certainly be a personal day. We haven't heard from the Chiefs yet what the reasoning was. We do know when we talked to Andy Reid, 2 hours before practice, that he wasn't on the list of guys who wasn't going to practice and weren't planning on playing on Thursday. So this could have been something that popped up, could have been personal. We don't know for sure. Obviously, we'll get a chance on Thursday to see if he's at the game and talking to Andy Reid afterwards for sure. But it does create a little bit of confusion there. With JuJu, the Chiefs are holding firm, just that the swollen knee and the sore knee is getting a little bit better. They expect him back. They are definitely treating this pretty, softly and everything. Won't play Thursday. Let's see if he, gets back next week. But all indications are that this team certainly is expecting him. So I think he'll absolutely be ready to go in week 1.
Well, I think you have to hope so, because that looks to be the strength of the roster right now is the pass catchers. That said, with last week's performance, how does 5 and 6 look to you? Because unless there's some kind of injury that prevents somebody from being on the roster at some point, we know who 1 through 4 are, right? And unless that's different, if 3 or 4 have been overtaken, you tell me right now.
No, I mean, I think top 4 have always been the top 4. And you could probably even say top 5, because I don't think anybody's dislodging Justin Watson out of that 5th spot. It's really going to be the 6th. And I've been going back and forth on this with the injury to JuJu, and, McColl's been dealing with a little thing. Probably makes 6 more likely. I mean, I think you need the depth, but then again, it also comes down to special teams. And that 6th spot, if you're going to keep it, needs to be a prime special teams player. You're certainly going to see a lot of guys in there on Thursday with a chance of that spot. I think Darius Fountain's in the lead for that, but you're going to see Josh Gordon. You're going to see Cornell Powell. You will probably see Corey Coleman. I mean, you're going to get an option. A few guys are going to get a chance to prove themselves. And, whether they can pry that spot away from Fountain, I mean, we'll see.
It's going to take something, because that's how you make the roster, folks. You stand out in this last game if you're one of the guys that's on the bubble. If you're outside the top 22, it's all a fight all the time. We'll have to see how that comes out. But we also have some other guys that have to fight for their roster spot or what their role is going to be this season. We're going to get to that coming up next. When you need to get into the action, BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check all your betting information for all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 source for all the odds, lines, games, and everything you need to get your money on the line in a smart way that gets you ready for whatever season you're looking for, whether it's this football season, could be baseball, NFL, NHL, NBA, even the golf and the combat sports are there at BetOnline. It continues to be the top resource for all of your sports wagering information, your live in-game betting, podcasts, scores, everything that you need to get covered. Head over there to BetOnline. It's easy to get to their website from any device, including your phone. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, as the game starts, they're not going to have Rashad Fenton. So let's start at the back of the defensive side of the ball. I think we've seen who can come in and play some reps here. If Rashad's not ready to go, it should be Josh Williams. Is there any reason that I'm wrong about that?
I think it's a closer race between who that guy is, between Josh Williams and Jalen Watson than one might think from the outside. I think Josh has certainly gotten a lot of the hype. And that's nothing against him. I think he's deserved it. But Watson honestly has been there right along with him. I mean, if increasingly that those two guys have rotated a lot. And even once again, this week in practice, it's been rotation. It's having watched practice the last couple of days, I cannot tell you from the reps which one of those guys is ahead of the other one on the depth chart, because they seem to be completely equal at this point. So who's going to get those reps? The one true winner in it will be Trent McDuffie, because McDuffie was most likely going to be the third guy who comes in. And, he's still going to be on the outside, so not what you'd say a true nickel, but he was going to be the nickel back. Now it's just a matter of McDuffie is going to be getting all of the reps. He's going to be starting outside along with Snead. Snead will move inside. Now it's a matter of who comes outside. And I think that race is still up for the grabs. And the race is honestly still up for the grabs to see if the Chiefs carry 5 or 6 corners and who they are.
Yeah, who they are is the interesting part, because you have to think, according to Reed, that this groin flare up was not a pull. I think he went out of his way to make sure we didn't see that. So it makes you think that Rashad Penny's going to be on the roster. There's no like short-term IR or anything like that they need to do with him. So it is temporary. But if you have to go play this third preseason game, you don't want to play McDuffie. You don't want to play Snead. Maybe give each of those guys a series. That seems to be enough, right? But if you have any kind of injury sustained to Jalen Watson, to Josh Williams, to DiCaprio Bootle at this point, now you're talking about having a 5 or a 6 that maybe you're not prepared to play with. And I think that's my concern here. Do you see one of those guys that needs to make the impression, whether it's Bootle or somebody else that can come up and say, hey, if you need me, if I need to be the 6, I can do this?
Yeah, and that's why, this preseason game Thursday is going to be huge for a lot of different reasons. If the Chiefs do keep 6 corners, the best special teams player of the group is Chris Lamons. That's the guy that Dave Toub is going to want. DiCaprio Bootle is probably your most well-rounded guy. Is somebody that they trust in the slot and can play outside too. The one with the most upside is Najee Johnson. That's the guy that, hey, there's a possibility maybe you can't sneak him onto the practice squad. And honestly, once again, from everything that I've seen in practice the last couple of days, I can't declare a winner in that race, because all 3 of them, when all 3 are playing on the exact same team and taking reps from each other, there's no true leader. It is absolutely going to come down to a lot of decisions to be made about what happens on Thursday. It's not everything, but Thursday is a lot in this race.
I think there's a lot on this game in particular. It doesn't end at the corner spot. We saw reps last season from Zane Anderson, some from Devin Key early in the preseason. Is there a shot for either of those guys to make this 53, or is it locked up at safety?
It seems locked up, if only because, it's hard to make a case for a 5th safety with the way this roster is looking right now. The top 4 are pretty locked in, with Deion Bush having that 4th spot behind Brian Cook. It's just hard to, at this point, make a case for a 5th safety, especially when you're making a case and convincing one for a 6th corner. And you've got other decisions. Right now, I would keep a 6th linebacker before I'm taking a 5th safety. I would keep 10 defensive linemen before I keep a 5th safety. That's just where they are. Injuries could always change that. Mm-hmm. And I think both those guys are prime candidates for the practice squad, because the Chiefs know that they can play. They are NFL players. So I think you'd like to have them around in case anything happens. But right now, it's hard to make a case that either one of them has cracked the 53.
It's interesting where you went there with your first, if then right there. Are there 6 NFL caliber linebackers on this roster right now?
I think, depending on how you put that, are there 6? Yeah. Jermaine Carter's been a productive NFL player. It was a full-time player essentially for the Panthers last year. Elijah Lee's been a full-time player. You feel pretty good about what you have with your young guys. Obviously we know Nick Bolt, Willie Gay aren't even in that conversation. Let's be clear there. Leo Chanel is obviously going to be a guy. The question is, who is best prepared to be your backup Mike linebacker right now? And throughout the preseason and training camp, it's been Darius Harris, who hasn't been a full-time player, but has been with this team for a while. He's got a lot of institutional knowledge, and once again, he's a really good special teams player. So, Carter is the biggest enigma at this point. If for no other reason than he's got a $1.7 million guaranteed contract that would make you think he's making this roster. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the snap counts and you look at usage, and you're right, you look at the numbers, can you keep 6 linebackers? It gets difficult. And I'm with you. Depth might be an issue there. That's certainly a position group that you don't want to see any injuries to your top guys, because I think the drop off there is a lot deeper than maybe some other spots. But these are why Brett Veach makes the big bucks, because this is where you may have to make the difficult decisions.
Decisions, I think, are getting more difficult as we get closer to the front of this defense, and in particular, the way that I see it now, after preseason game number 2, is that Malik Herring is the 5th defensive end, but they're going to let Josh Kano play enough to make a case. Does he have a chance at pushing Herring out of the way?
Yeah, that's how I see it as well. Even though that, once again, the snaps between those two have been fairly even all along, it's the little things that we've seen. I mean, as far as, who gets the nod, maybe running with the ones, or even, who gets the most reps with the twos, it's fairly consistently been Herring. And honestly, I think even the play on the field and what we've seen in camp, I mean, I think he's been better at this point. So I think he's got the advantage. Yeah, I think it's close enough, though, that, and especially games matter. How guys perform when the lights are on and people are out there and everything. I mean, we've seen it before. You can look great in training camp and great in practice, but if you struggle when it comes to game times, that can be an issue. And I don't necessarily think that we've seen that with any of those guys yet. But that's why, I mean, yeah, that's another position where I think Thursday night's going to be a very big deal. I do think that if the Chiefs keep 5, which I think they will, defensive ends, I think Malik is that guy right now, but it's not a slam dunk by any means.
Inside seems very clear to me, and I want to get your take because obviously Chris Jones, Derek Nottie, Turk Wharton got Jones reps, easily the top 3. Colin Saunders is the 4 to me right now, and I have to feel like Danny Shelton's got the inside curve to make this roster. But does Stallworth have an option? Is there anybody else? Where do you have it right now before they get into game 3?
Yeah, Stallworth, it's an interesting case because, again, this is a veteran guy who's been around for a while and has been a productive NFL player. So, you could see him, there's certainly being a spot for him, but I'm with you. I mean, especially because I think Colin Saunders has had a really good training camp, and it seems to really be responding to Joe Cullen's approach. I mean, Cullen really wants these guys to get upfield, and and Saunders really seems to have responded to that. And if for no other reason, then I think Danny Shelton has come in to do some of the things that maybe the Chiefs have wanted Colin Saunders to do in the past, being a big guy. That's not necessarily Colin Saunders' game. I mean, he's much better, and I think better equipped to get upfield rather than eat blocks. Now that you got Danny Shelton to do that, Colin Saunders can probably do a little bit more what he's prepared to do, what he wants to do. So I think he's really responded pretty well. Yeah, I mean, there's some questions. I mean, I can't make a case though that Dunlap and on the outside and Shelton on the inside, there's any reason why you shouldn't keep both those guys around.
That's my thought as well. 7 snaps for Danny Shelton, not enough to really say, oh, look at that big. But you got the track record you have to rely on in that case. That's why you bring in a veteran. So last question, because it's everybody's favorite position group right now. Is there anything Rojo can do to make this roster?
I talked about Jermaine Carter being an enigma. Ronald Jones is the biggest one.
Right.
Because I have no idea what's going on with this guy. Doesn't look like there's anything wrong with Ronald Jones. But once again, we have a track record. This guy has been the 4th running back consistently, to the point where once that's what you are, that's what you are. So I can't make a case at this point that Ronald Jones is anything more than the 4th running back. And can you keep 5? Because you are definitely keeping Mike Burton. I don't know. And when Thursday night, watch the game, because chances are, when you see guys out there taking snaps with Dustin Crum, the 3rd team, it's usually going to be a lot of guys who aren't going to be making the team. And you're probably going to see Ronald Jones out there, especially, with Derek Gore being a little bit banged up. I mean, Tayon Flee-Davis, your last guy now. I mean, you're probably going to see Ronald Jones out there. And if that's the case, it's hard to see him on the 53. But once again, he's the best trade candidate that this team has. If another team has some injuries, maybe they get a call. There's some other positions too, where I think there's some veterans who might fit into that. But based on what we've seen in camp, I mean, no. I mean, I'm going to have my final 53, well, my penultimate 53 roster projection. We'll have a final one after the game, but I'll have one coming up on Wednesday. And Ron Jones isn't going to be on it. And I don't feel 100% confident in that, but I don't know if there's anything that Ronald Jones can do. I mean, I think that position group is probably something that's, if he makes the team, it's probably because something else has happened.
That's my thought as well. And I'm going to try to do one just to keep up with you. But folks, you got to go see it at Chiefs Digest. That's where you can get Matt's actual roster prediction as well as the breakdown. For me, I don't see there's any way that anybody makes it other than Clyde, McKinnon, and Pacheco. And in that order, folks, that's how I see them right now. I know Pacheco's looked good at times. I don't think you can elevate him past Jerick McKinnon right now because of the trust factor. But I will say this, Jerick McKinnon's not the only veteran. I can also see after week 1, when players are signable, that the newly released Kenyon Drake could be an option for this team to bring in another veteran that has some oomph, that can play in the pass game and might really diversify that backfield a little bit more. Am I dreaming here, Matt?
No, I mean, I think Brett Veach has shown he is absolutely going to kick the tires on anybody that he thinks can make this team a better team. And I think that's not the one position alone. I mean, that I think that you might see the Chiefs trying to do some things either over the weekend after these final preseason games, as far as maybe even a trade goes. I mean, certainly go back to Traverse Ward and Parker Enger. You know, you got a guy that may not make your roster. There's a guy on another team that you like that may not make their roster. Maybe there's a trade to be made there, but that's a possibility. I think offensive tackle is certainly a possibility. Tight end is certainly a possibility now. So, hey, and remember, I always say with the 53 roster that gets set next Tuesday, it's an initial 53. It's not week 1 because there's still going to be a lot of activity. And I think this is a year where the Chiefs might have some turnover after they set that first group on Tuesday.
All over the league tonight, folks. You will hear this on various telephones. Let's make a deal. I hope that something comes of it. Make sure that you guys tune in here because we're going to have all the breakdown for you as we run up to that game and in its aftermath. Get to Chiefs Digest and see what Matt's putting out there because he's going to get it right, probably better than I am by a long shot. So check that out. Matt, thanks for your time today as always.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. Take care, everybody.
Folks, have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.